Hey, truth seekers, welcome back. Zach here. It's November 1st, 2016. Later today will be Game 6 of the World Series taking place in Cleveland, Ohio. Also, today in Cleveland, Ohio, there is an NBA basketball game. And notice the Cleveland Cavaliers are hosting the Houston Rockets. They're starting the game ahead of schedule because the World Series is also there. It's funny that they're hosting the Houston Rockets because Houston has gematria of 112, and this right now is the 112th World Series. In spring training, I predicted that the World Series would be Cubs versus Houston Astros, and I picked Houston mostly because of their 112 gematria. What's so interesting is, as we know, the World Series is Cubs versus Cleveland Indians. If the Indians win the World Series today in Game 6, this is why that's so interesting. Not only is Houston in town for basketball with the 112 coding, today comes exactly 112 days after the All-Star game. The All-Star game is the reason the game is in Cleveland today. The way they've changed the rules in recent years, whichever league wins the All-Star game, American League or National League, whoever wins, that league gets home field advantage in the World Series. The Cubs in the National League had the best record in baseball, 103 wins. The Indians only won 94 games, 9 less. But despite that, the Indians got home field advantage to play in Cleveland first, to close out in Cleveland. So how amazing. The 112 the 112 team is in town, Houston's in Cleveland. 112 days after the World Series. Also interesting in gematria, Game 6, the small way, 33, the big way, 78. That's the exact same as Cleveland. Cleveland's 33 and 78. I pointed out earlier this year how Jose Fernandez, the Florida Marlin who died, the name Fernandez in gematria sums to 93. From his last birthday to today's game is 93 days. That's interesting for these reasons. The Florida Marlins have parallels to the Cleveland Indians, who they played in the World Series in 97. That was the 93rd World Series ever, 1997. So there's the 93 parallel. For the Chicago Cubs, they have history with the Marlins. They lost in the NLCS 2003, the Steve Bartman incident, to the Marlins. This year, the baseball season began on April 3rd, 2016, which is typically the 93rd day of the year, but because this year was a leap year, it was the 94th day. The Cubs became the first team to clinch a playoff spot with their 93rd win in their 146th game. The number 93 to the occult is also the number for Saturn, the keeper of time. Here we are, we're measuring time, distances, talking about the significance of 93. List of 93s, Fernandez 93, Indians won 93, or lost 93 World Series in Game 7. Also, the Cleveland Cavaliers this year went to Game 7 of the NBA Finals. They won that final game 93 to 89. It was played in Oracle Arena. Oracle Arena equals 93. The Cavs won 93 to 89. King James equals 89. It was on the real King James's birthday. From the date the Cavs won the NBA Finals, the real King James's birthday, June 19th, to today is 135 days. That's a number that has to do with prophecy. Prophecy was huge in the coding of the NBA Finals, and it's true as well here in the World Series. The key of David equals 135. So does the name Josh Tomlin. So does the name Corey Kluber. So does Wrigley Field. Josh Tomlin and Corey Kluber went in and won Wrigley Field on the road by the numbers. So how interesting, it's 135 days from that Cleveland championship to this one. And tonight it's Josh Tomlin who is pitching. Josh Tomlin, Corey Kluber, both equal 135 like Wrigley Field where they won on the road. Also interesting, today's November 1st, 111. You know, the way you write the date, 1/11 or 11/1, it's 3 ones. The NBA Finals equals 111. Remember, NBA Finals, or I didn't even tell you this. NBA Finals without the in the front sums to 78, like Cleveland, like Game 6. In Game 6 of the NBA Finals, the final score was 216 points, the Cleveland area code. If the Indians win tonight, it'll be 2 championships and 16 for Cleveland, 216. Also, when the Cavs won the NBA Finals, they won it on the road. They were the first team since 1978 to win Game 7 on the road. Cleveland 78. Game 6 78. Also interesting, when the Cleveland Cavaliers won Game 7, it was their 103rd game of the season. Dropped the 0 from the middle. You're at 13. It was LeBron's 13th season. Tonight, Jacob Arrieta is on the mound. Jacob Arrieta equals 103. The Cubs won 103 games in the World Series. Billy Goat equals 103. And the Cubs, they broke the curse of the Billy Goat returning to the World Series. But part of the curse of the Billy Goat is that the Cubs will never win another World Series. So if they lose tonight with the 103 win season with Arrieta starting 103, that's what it was all about. That said, I'm not convinced Cleveland is going to win tonight. A lot lines up. It could happen. I won't be surprised at all if they do. But I'm not sure that's it. I've been saying it's going to go to Game 7 for a long time. A lot has lined up for the Cubs this year. Remember, Jacob Arrieta himself had the first no-hitter of the year on the 112th day of the year, 46 days after his birthday. Chicago 46, Chicago Cubs 46, no-hitter equals 46. Then again, last year the New York Mets were involved in the first no-hitter of the season, and they went to the World Series. I predicted last year in spring training the Mets would be in the World Series and would win it. They made it. They didn't win. New York equals 111. New York lost in the 111th World Series that ended November 1st by the time the game was over. 111th World Series, 111. If today's World Series ends on November 1st, again, it's a tribute to the NBA Finals. Universal Standard Time, it'll already be November 2nd when the game's over, a lot like 112 as well, perhaps a double tribute. So we'll see what happens. I find it very interesting that this lines up. Something else interesting, the last time the Indians won the World Series, it was 1948. Today's date has 48 numerology. They're honoring the only surviving member of the 1948 World Series team, Eddie Robinson. He's about to turn 96 years old later this year. Freemason 96, that special number. Played 13 years with the Cleveland Indians. He has birth numerology of 66. The word curse equals 66. 2 cursed baseball teams, Cubs and Indians. World Series has that gematria of 66. We'll see what happens. I'm just playing it out by ear at this point. Again, people, all year I've been saying why I like the Cubs. But as the research goes on, as the narrative becomes more clear, I show everyone what there is. You know, you got to appreciate the full spectrum. Somebody also posted this comment today with regards to the 1948 thing in the Indians. In the 1948 election, it's where the Chicago paper mistakenly printed that Dewey defeated Truman. Dewey defeats Truman, 1948. Donald Trump in gematria equals 48. He had his Republican convention in Cleveland. Donald Trump also began his presidential campaign in the 48th state, Arizona. Notice the date of this misprint in history was November 3rd, 1948. So a couple things are interesting about this. 11/3. Remember, 113 is the number for mainstream dishonest, Scottish Rite Freemasonry. Number coded into purposeful mainstream lies all the time. Here we're talking about the mainstream newspaper. It was also a date with 81 numerology. Chicago in Jewish gematria equals 81. This did come out of Chicago. And think about Chicago in light of, another parallel potentially to this World Series. I've been shown how much of this World Series is synced up with the election. Hillary, you could say, is represented by the Cubs, perhaps Donald Trump by the Indians. So there it is, Truth Seeker. This truly is further proof of how it's all scripted. Even if the Indians don't win tonight, there's a reason Houston's playing in town during Game 6. You know? Earlier this year, I showed how Houston Astros and Cubs had their series starting on September 9th, 9-9. Illinois equals 99. It was 46 days before the start of the World Series. Chicago equals 46. Chicago Cubs. There was a reason I was talking about Houston in spring training. They didn't make it to the World Series, but see, the tributes are still in effect. And notice the 9-point spread on tonight's game. You know, baseball, game of 9 innings. We'll see what happens. Till next time, Truth Seekers.